Hi everyone, welcome back to Housing with Hillel, where you'll learn everything you need to know about real estate in Israel on one foot. Hope everyone's feeling well as we move out of this crisis mode into a new normal. Part of this new normal has been a change in the way we think about and approach face-to-face interactions. With many people still vulnerable and a lot of restrictions still in place, both here in Israel and abroad, the way that we search for apartments and for houses is changing as well. So this episode, I want to speak practically for anyone who's looking for an apartment to buy or to rent, or is debating whether it's even worthwhile or possible to find a place this summer. Spoiler alert, it is. The key is changing our perspective and realigning our expectations. At Trusted House, we like talking about the housing journey. We believe very strongly that in order to have the most efficient and successful housing experience, there are a number of steps you need to go through before even searching for a place. We have what we call the 7 steps, which I'm going to run through real quick with you, and both in this episode and the coming episodes, we'll talk about how those are changing in today's climate. The first step is identifying your needs and preferences. Now is the perfect time to be doing this, since you've probably been spending a lot of time at home recently, and you're able to recognize what things are missing in your home, what things you appreciate you have in your home, and what you might look for in the next place that you'll live. A helpful way of doing this is to think about things categorically. Think about your religious needs, your personal needs, your health, work, education, accessibility, transportation. There are things you like to be close to, things you want to have a view of. The next step is planning financially. Rather than approximating a budget and having to work backwards from there, it's really important to come up with a specific budget that you should be working with. This can be done by yourself with an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, or with a professional. For those who are buying, the mortgage approval process is a critical component of this. In a few weeks, we're going to have a whole episode just about this topic with Yoni Hyman, who we had on last week. If you're looking to rent, it's a little bit more straightforward. The general rule that people recommend is to not spend more than a third of your net income on the rentals. So it's helpful to speak to a professional, even just for a short consultation, to make sure that you're budgeting yourself responsibly. If you're not sure if you should be budgeting yourself to buy or to rent, we plan on having an episode about that exact topic in a couple of weeks as well. Step 3 is community matching. Deciding where you're going to live and who your children will grow up with is one of the most important decisions that you'll make in your life. You may know exactly where you're going to live already, and that's great. For those who don't, we also are going to have an episode dedicated solely to this purpose in a couple of weeks. Next is the apartment search itself. This is the part that's probably changed the most during the pandemic. There are many ways to find apartments and houses in Israel. There are about a dozen Hebrew websites, the major ones being Yad Shtayim, Como, Homeless, Win-Win, Madlan, and a number of others. A lot of listings can be found on local Facebook groups, some public, some private, as well as WhatsApp groups, which are generally private as well. Other places are still listed the old-fashioned way, in newspapers, through realtors, or even from signs hanging from balconies. I know this may sound a little bit overwhelming because there's so many sources to look through, groups to get accepted into, listings to sort through and see if they're even relevant anymore, the details were correct. Most people don't have the time or the energy to search through all these different avenues and will generally choose one or two to focus in on. But for those who want a more comprehensive search, covering all your bases, including a lot of the localized groups which you may not have access to, this is a service that we provide at Trusted House. I personally lead a team of people who search through many different sources on a daily basis, filtering through the listings which are no longer relevant, and emailing, calling, messaging all the different landlords and realtors to sort through all the noise and come up with a short list that's actually relevant for you based on steps 1 and 2. But if you have the time and the energy and the requisite level of Hebrew, by all means, take a crack at it yourself. A sub-step within step 4 is actually seeing the apartments that interest you. Seeing apartments these days is firstly through pictures and videos. Unfortunately, most landlords and even most realtors are not professional photographers. You have to use your imagination a little bit to picture how the place would look like given the images and the data available to you. Once you've done that first level of filtering and deciding what might actually be worth your while to go ahead and see, there are a couple of possible ways of moving forward. If you're living abroad or far away, you'll want to find someone you trust, like a friend or family member, or myself of course, to go there in a way that follows all the relevant health regulations and film for you a live video through Skype or WhatsApp video or Zoom, so you can have them focus on all the areas that the realtor or the landlord wouldn't show otherwise. If you're living in Israel and no one's living in the apartment currently, you can arrange to have the key left for you so you can see the apartment without having to have any physical interaction with other people. If, however, you're part of a vulnerable population or you're limited by public transportation, you may want to stick with option number 1. And lastly, if people are living in the apartment, you can try to arrange a time for everyone to either step out onto the balcony or go outside for a few minutes so you can see the apartment in a socially distanced approved way. Once you've seen a place that you like and are interested in moving forward, we move on to step number 5, closing. This is where you'll negotiate the price and the terms of the rental or the purchase. We'll be speaking next episode with Jane Ullman about the legal aspects of this. For those who are buying, this is where the mortgage closing takes place. As I mentioned before, we'll speak about that further in a couple of weeks. The next step is adaptation. This is where you take an apartment or a house and turn it into your home. If you're buying, you'll likely want to do some renovations or at least some painting and basic fixes. And even if you're renting, you'll likely want to get some new appliances and furniture and have those set up before you move in. You'll also most likely want to have the place cleaned and exterminated before you move in. A lot of people actually make the mistake of switching that order, but a lot of the chemicals that they spray need to sit there for a long period of time in order for them to be effective. So if you spray and then clean right afterwards, then there's really no point to it. Last but not least is moving. If you've gotten this far, you should give yourself a round of applause and drink a l'chaim for all of your hard work. If you're moving from abroad and bringing a lift, then there's added logistics involved, and that too we will be speaking about in a future episode. At this stage, you'll also want to get all of your utilities and bills set up so you can get back to all those Zoom calls and Netflix in your new home. I know this sounds like a lot of different pieces and people to manage, but trust me, it is doable. You may have noticed from all my plugs for future episodes, we at Trusted House have an incredible team and network of professionals and specialists we work with throughout the housing journey, because we believe that the key to our success, which is ultimately your success, is the integration between all these different pieces to make your life easier. One voice to guide you smoothly from step to step and always have you prepared for what's coming next. But as I said before, if you have enough time and energy and a high enough level of Hebrew to tackle this on your own, you're more than invited to use these videos to help self-guide through the housing journey. Either way, thank you for joining us, and please share this video with all of your friends, family, and colleagues. Feel free to ask any questions or request topics for future videos in the comments below. See you next time.